one off-course excursion. He's up the hill, lighting up the tires. We've got him under 14 seconds, and he beat Unser out. Jr. on the pit road with one car between them.
So the two Penske cars, Al Unser Jr. and Paul Tracy, led by Paul Tracy, comes out of the pits.
Now, it's very rare. There's Emerson coming out right behind there. And it's very rare that Penske brings both of them in at the same time. So that means they had a little bit of question through their telemetry. The telemetry is how they send the computer information from the cars to the pit. Probably said they were both a little bit close on fuel. So brought them both in at the same time.
And, of course, with that maneuver, Emerson Fittipaldi picks up the lead of the race, though Paul Tracy got across the line ahead of Al Unser Jr. on the last lap in the pits, so he was scored as the leader of the race coming out of the pits. Now we're on board with Nigel, who, again, they thought he was going to come in on the last lap. He most certainly should be due on this lap.
I went to the local go-kart track the other night just to check it out and to take a couple of laps. Who should be there but Nigel Mansell with his family? He gave me a little grin. He was hoping to be incognito, but he had a Kmart hat on, so I knew it was him even at a distance before I noticed the driving style, which, let's say, was a little bit better than the other customers at the time. When he got out of the car, I jumped right into the one he'd been driving. It's not every day you get to drive the same car that Nigel Mansell does.
And I don't think he's very incognito with a Kmart hat on either, Sam.
Yeah, but how fast were you in Nigel's car?
I'm not saying. I don't want to disparage Nigel. I know he's had a tough year, and I don't want to add insult to injury.
I'll tell you what, one of the great things about him is his love for his children and the fact that all weekend they camped out at the track here, and as soon as the practice is over, he grabs the kids and they off to a movie or off to the go-kart track. Well, Nigel Mansell now makes his turn down the pit road. They are all the way at the other end. There's his pit, and Jack Arute is waiting.
And behind Nigel Mansell comes Michael Andretti, Robbie Gordon. This will be a fast stop for Mansell because they've elected not to make any major changes on his car. Mario Andretti will also find his way to pit road. Meanwhile, Michael Andretti getting service for fuel and just 4 tires. Robbie Gordon, on the other hand, they have radioed in that they are going to, and there's a problem on Michael Andretti's car. The jack actually stayed hung up. Michael lit up the tires, and now they're going to have to refire his car. Robbie Gordon is away. Mario Andretti is away. And Michael is very slow getting out. A costly miscue for the Ganassi team.
So the stops are routine for all but Michael Andretti. Emerson Fittipaldi, the leader, is now in, Gary.
Not anticipating any changes. He inherited the lead after his teammates came in for routine service. Emerson flips the throttle. There he goes.
Emerson, the cars here have limited slip rear end, just the opposite of what they do on oval track. That's the reason you saw one tire spin and the other one not spinning so much, all because it's a limited slip. Remember, one rear tire will turn faster than the other.
Emerson, of course, has won the last 2 races here at Mid-Ohio, IndyCar races, and won 3 altogether.
Mauricio Gugelmin, 4th place car, is in the pits. This will conclude the stops for all of the leaders of the race. So Gugelmin, again, this appears to be fairly routine for him, too. The crew taking their time, doing a nice job, and away he rolls. There's Raul Boesel.
Now there's a guy right there, the Boesel car. That's a Dick Simon, the Duracell car there that has the electric shift in it. One of the few cars that have electric shift. Now this is quite different, Paul, in that the drivers touch the gear shift and these things shift automatically. It's close to an automatic transmission. The officials, of course, are looking at it, trying to determine is that something that violates the rules or if the guys just outsmarted them.
Look at Nigel now as he charges on Mauricio Gugelmin. They're battling side by side down that long back straight. Bobby Rahal is right there, too. And Mike Croft just behind Rahal.
There's one of those shifters in that car of Nigel Mansell's, too. It's been in there all season. Look at this. A bid by Rahal on the outside of Gugelmin. No.
Rahal, who probably knows this course better than any other driver, it's his home course. Let's just listen.
Like your passenger car that you drive on the street. It's a V8 engine. whereas opposed to the Cosworth Ford cars or the Elmore engines, they fired 2 pistons at one time, what they call a 180-degree shaft. There's a different sound, and we always hear that in the Hondas.
Right after the pit stops, they line up with Paul Tracy. We're on Michael Andretti right now. That's Jacques Villeneuve just to the inside. Another car line off his left front. Look how close, and Villeneuve finally forces his way ahead. And that's an ongoing battle for 9th place. But look how crowded it is there and how close they've gotten.
And that's the one turn that Michael had a chance to pass him on the outside. That's the turn that it's easy to pass on the outside because that's where the groove is.
Michael Andretti going to try Villeneuve again.
And remember the emotions of Michael Andretti at this point. He'd been running solidly in contention for 4th place. Troubles in the pits. He's got to feel excited, anxious, wants to get back into the swing of things as fast as he can. And suddenly he comes up Jacques Villeneuve, who's one of the best young drivers in the business.
You're on board with the 10th place car, Michael Andretti. Teo Fabi is just behind him and continuing to worry him. Now they have the slower car of Hiro Matsushita just ahead of them that they will all have to handle up. And look at that line of traffic that is just behind.
You know that a guy like Matsushita there in the yellow and blue car right ahead, there he moved to the outside, but you know he's got to feel uncomfortable with all these hot dogs right behind him. There he moved to the outside, but you know he's got to feel uncomfortable with all these hot dogs right behind him.
Michael Andretti, Teo Fabi just behind him. Then Mario Andretti runs in 12th. Jimmy Vasser is 13th. Raul Boesel 14th. Scott Sharp is 15th. Michael tries to the inside under braking. Villeneuve stays in position. Michael gets him.
Michael squeezed him out a little bit, almost onto the grass. Villeneuve almost hit the grass. Now, if one tire hits that grass, he's off like a rock getting in a slingshot.
Boy, I'll tell you, when Michael was hired for Formula One by Ron Dennis of McLaren, he hired him because he was one of the great overtakers in the business, and you just saw a really gutsy pass.
But look just behind them. Paul Tracy, the leader of the race, is closing, and in fact, there are 12 cars on the leader lap as Paul Tracy cuts his way up through the field. It's a racing afternoon here on ABC Sports. We will continue after this with racing's ultimate test of skill. 12 of the world's best in identically prepared cars go head-to-head in the International Race of Champions, the run that determines the championship. And let me tell you, it's a great race. We're back on board with 6th place Bobby Rahal. His pit crew, Jim Prescott and the guys, really helped him out on the stop, moved him up 2 positions during his pit stop. For a further update, though, let's go down to the pits and Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, the Rahal team, led by Carl Hogan, made the first maybe major gamble of this afternoon. They went with a 4-tire change, but they didn't take on a full 40-gallon load of fuel. They got about 35 gallons in. As soon as the tire change was complete, they took him off the jacks and sent him on his way. He gained 2 spots out of the pits with a 10.4-second pit stop. Interesting strategy.
Well, that strategy could backfire on them, but by the same token, they just think that staying up near the front is more important. Remember, the reliability of the Honda, even though it's running better, it's been worse. And the big problem there is they don't have what they call a girdle down underneath the engine. The cylinder block or the engine itself is part of the frame on all of these cars. And the Honda engine is apparently twisting, so therefore the main bearings in the engine have a tendency to go out occasionally. They're changing this. They just don't have it done yet.
In other words, Bobby, here's an issue that doesn't just relate to horsepower or breathing or RPM. It's a function of how the engine is when it's in the car, the kind of thing you can't really test on a dynamometer.
Actually part of the frame, Sam, and you can't test anything like that on the dynamometer. But it's something apparently Honda doesn't have the experience in as opposed to Cosworth or the Elmore engine.
Yeah, but I keep saying to you, Bobby, when Honda gets it right, look out. Remember what they did in Formula One. We
all know that Honda has the capabilities of being very fast.
Go back in the field now to the onboard camera of Raul Boesel, who again, as Bobby Unser mentioned, is driving with the that new selector that has been available to some of the other Lola teams in the year, but he didn't get the full test on it last week that he wanted to. There's his onboard telemetry. He runs 23rd right now.
You can
13th.
watch the shifts, the RPM when he shifts. There's just hardly any change. And naturally it comes down, but there's no lag because the shifting is instantaneous. For example, he doesn't even on the Duracell car lift off the gas when he shifts. He just merely puts the pedal to the floorboard and leaves it. Now, of course, when he goes into the turns, they have to slow down a little bit there. That won't work.
He was consistently fast all through practice, but when the came time to qualify, he had trouble with that shifting mechanism, Bobby, which is why he qualified 17th and is still working his way slowly through the field.
And what happened, Sam, they figured out his elbow was hitting this new little secret trick that makes it shift electrically.
All right, let's go forward now in the field. The 7th place battle is Robbie Gordon. Just ahead of him is Gugelmin. Rahal has been in this fight as 2. There's Rahal just behind, so we're looking at the battle 5th, 6th, 7th. Gordon able to get around Rahal. Now beginning to attack Mauricio Gugelmin. Gugelmin has had 4 top 10s this year, all of them on road courses. That's as would be expected, considering his Formula One experience. Though last year Nigel Mansell did the reverse of that at this point in the season, scoring most of his points on the ovals. Next week, the Indy cars are in New Hampshire at Loudon, which is the fast oval there and is the last true oval of the year. They'll also race Nazareth, but most of the teams approach that the way they do a road course.
Just look at the difference that Robbie Gordon has, the different concepts he has on how he takes the turn as opposed to the other cars. I've been watching this all day, and it's totally unorthodox and different, but it seems to be working pretty good for him.
Bobby, you know, I just thought of something. You know, Robbie's experience in off-road racing, that's exactly the way they take the turns there, too. They go in very deep and then crank the car.
I think one of the things that I like about Robbie's driving, Sam, is the fact that he doesn't just copy what other guys do.
Right.
He always is continually trying something different, and sometimes it works.
There's some new telemetry for you, kind of a heads-up display, a suggestion of a number of the fans that this might be one other way to take a look at the telemetry and still let you see all of the race cars. Heads-up display just like you use in a fighter jet today. Gear indicated across the bottom, lateral G's on the top, RPMs to the left. A little bit of a red telltale to tell you what the peak was.
The RPMs quit at what, 12.5?
Yeah.
Actually, they didn't make that graph high enough.
Not quite out.
They're going up to 13.6.
Well, let me tell you something. The teams are real sensitive about how precise that electronic graph is. You can get just a little too much information when you got a brain like yours, Bobby, trying to figure it out. So it's a little bit of a coarse measurement.
What do you figure, Bobby? 13,000, 13.3?
13.6, Sam.
13.6.